and welcome to Moneylife. This is Sucheta Dalal. I'm going to take forward today the question that so many of you had when you looked at my video last week. Last week I talked about how two super senior citizens, both 82-year-old, had been ripped off by their brokers. And so many of you have posted comments and written to me to say, why did you not name the brokers? Well, quite simply, it was to protect those investors because they probably have a further battle in their hand, and also because SEBI marks those orders as confidential. Now, what I'm going to do this time, since so many of you had questions, is to explain how and why it happens and what needs to be done. For this, I need to tell you a story. Several years ago, I used to be a member of the Consumer Complaints Committee of the Advertising Standards Council of India. Now, if you see something that's false and misleading in an advertisement, you can file a complaint and there is action taken. Now, when I was there, we noticed that week after week, there would be two powerful personal care companies who had fairness products, you remember, Fair and Lovely and whatever, which used to bombard all television channels with their fairness cream ads. Essentially, those ads said, dark skins are bad, fair skin is good, if you have a fair skin, you do better in life. All the wrong things which are globally looked down on. Now, what happened is that ASCI would meet, the Consumer Complaints Committee would meet, and they would take a decision that the ad has to be withdrawn. The whole process, first a complaint coming in, the committee meeting, and then an order going out to say withdraw the ads, would take about 4 to 6 weeks. In those 6 weeks, these ads would be blasted on every channel so that when there is an order, they would be withdrawn, there would be silence for a few more weeks, and there would be the next ad, very similar, saying more or less the same thing, and it would go on and on and on. So after a while, we began to feel that we were being made fools of, and some of us began to say that let's have a threshold and let's identify what we call habitual offenders. So if repeatedly the ad is withdrawn for the same reason, that it's showing dark skins as bad, it's promoting fairness, it's trying to say if you have a dark skin, you have less confidence, then there should be action. Set the threshold at 3, 5, 7, whatever, but let there be a threshold. Nothing happened because ASCI is controlled by powerful advertisers and the advertising industry. They're the ones who produce it. They knew exactly what they were doing. This went on, there would be discussions, there would be talk about threshold. Nothing really happened until all over the world, the Black Lives Matters campaign really took root. People were so angry at color discrimination. And that's when both ad agencies who like to pretend they're very woke and these companies realized it'll be more damaging to do what they were doing. And they unilaterally came forward and said, we're not advertising anymore. Now, the question you would have is, what does that have to do with investors? We believe, or rather I believe, that that's exactly what is happening. Think about it. The same game is being played with investors. You are not allowed to make an informed choice. You cannot get enough data before selecting an intermediary who has a fiduciary responsibility to safeguard your investment. And like I told you last week, they take people for a ride. They know the rules. They game the system. They know calls are being recorded. They game it in a manner that they are in the right and the investor is always in the wrong. So either emails are sent to wrong addresses, there are multiple ways in which to do it. Go back and read that article of mine. Here's a link on top and you will know what I'm talking about. Now, what happens when an investor gets ripped off and files a complaint? So understand the process. Investor files a complaint against the broker. The exchange typically sends it to the broker. The broker accepts he's wrong. They correct it. That's the end of the story. Now, if the dispute is unresolved, it goes to the Investor Grievance Redressal Committee, which is set up by exchanges. It's called IGRC. This kind of committee is available with experts in every large city. Those are the orders that I wrote about last time. Many times they're sympathetic and the rulings are either in favor of the investor or the broker. Now, if either side is unhappy with the ruling, it goes to arbitration. SEBI has a common list of arbitrators across exchanges to show neutrality. These arbitration orders are uploaded, but it's very tedious for an individual investor to look at it. Exchanges also report all this data and the awards to SEBI. SEBI picks up some of them. So as I said, there are strict mandatory timelines for the functioning of IGRC and no timelines for arbitration orders. So when SEBI takes up something, it takes forever. If an IGRC ruling comes in, then up to a threshold, a broker's account is automatically debited, the money goes to the investor. If he contests it, then the whole new process starts. To my mind, this is too little, too late. SEBI orders come 5 to 7 years later. The individual is tired, battling on his own without enough information. So, to my mind, the GRC orders and arbitration orders ought to send early warning signals. And SEBI has to check whether this is happening. How important is this? To try and understand it, I searched for information on a website called watchoutinvestors.com. Now we are showing you the website up here. There's a link. Click on it. This is a public service resource which I think every investor needs to know about, because all orders across regulators, tribunals in the financial sector, including CBI and others, are posted over here and you can look at it. Now, I requested Pranav Haldia, who is the founder of Watch Out Investors, whether I could get data on the top 10 brokers who had the maximum arbitration orders against them. Believe me, it's very tedious to go through, look at it. It was hard work, and I must appreciate Mr. Haldia's team. They painstakingly and generously devoted time to sort it out, not for 1 or 2 years, but going back to 2007. So they looked at awards of the National Stock Exchange, Bombay Stock Exchange, and the Metropolitan Stock Exchange of India. That was from 2012. Now, look at this chart. These are the top 10 brokers where arbitration orders have gone against them. I mean, we're going to keep this image for a while so that you can look at all the brokers' names: Dreams Broking, Unicorn Securities, Sunchan Securities, India Infoline, BMA Wealth Creators, Religare Securities, Angel Broking, Karvy Stock Broking, Mungipa Investments, and Nirmal Bang Securities. As you know, many of them are very, very top leading firms. Now, again, the odds, like I said, are against investors. So you look at this small number and you know these are investors who have really fought it out. Maybe sometimes the numbers are large enough, they got a lawyer, but often they are doing it on their own, like in the case of the last two orders that I talked about. This is an important point. So those numbers where you see 814 as the highest number of complaints, orders gone against, and Nirmal Bang, which is 68, they don't even begin to tell you the true story. What you need to remember is the second point, that out of these 10, as many as 6 brokers, and I'm showing you this chart again, 6 have been expelled and declared defaulters, including the one with the largest number of complaints. So Dreams Broking was declared defaulter by the BSE in 2015, Mungipa in October 2015, Unicorn was expelled in September 2014, Sunchan in Jan 2009, and BMA Wealth Creators, that story is not over by any chance, in February 2020, and Karvy, which was one of the biggest and best known brokers, in November 2020. This raises serious questions about why we do not have early warning signals, and I'm going to keep harping on it because remember, Karvy got 1 year from SEBI to try and bring in more money, then declared a defaulter. Even today, there are 44,306 applications pending with the Investor Protection Fund, the NSE alone, for some kind of compensation from investors. The arbitration cases that we're talking about are long ago, they're history. They're not what has happened in the last 2 years. Karvy had 2.5 lakh customers. The same is true for BMA Wealth Creators. Now, it has 16,492 investors who have applied for compensation after it was expelled. It continues to make headlines. In fact, just today, we have a story in the Economic Times which says that SEBI, NSE and BSE have gone to the Supreme Court against an order that was issued by the Securities Appellate Tribunal in February, on February 21st, 2022, where it had dismissed a SEBI order penalizing HDFC Bank 1 crore rupees for invoking client securities that were illegally pledged by BMA Wealth Creators and BMA Commodities. The amount involved was huge, 158.68 crore. Readers should note that this is another trick that BMA Wealth has used to obfuscate the negative trail. It is now known by another name, BRH Commodities. So when you Google, you look for BMA, you won't find anything much. But today's order and article in the Economic Times of 25th May will be under BRH. So you won't know what is going on. SEBI has to take note of all of this. Now the order has gone in favor of HDFC Bank, like I told you. SEBI has very heartening development, gone to court along with NSE and BSE. But I want to make another point. HDFC Bank is the largest private bank, largest bank in India, constantly having complaints about how it deals with market-related issues and pledge of securities or fixed deposits by brokers. So in August 2020, HDFC had invoked a fixed deposit pledge by Edelweiss in a broking firm called India Nivesh. The amount was 100 crore. This matter went to court, then went for arbitration and has disappeared from public view. We don't know what has happened. HDFC Bank is also among the 6 entities which provided a loan against illegally pledged shares of Karvy stockbrokers. Now, Karvy, again in the news, like I said, 6 people, and here's an article again. Take a look at it, click the link. You will know the details about how 6 entities gave money, nearly 1,000 crores to Karvy against illegally pledged shares. That is being investigated by the Enforcement Directorate. I've talked about it recently, by SEBI, and it's before the Securities Appellate Tribunal. A third company in the list is important, India Infoline. Listed company, it's among the top 10 brokers with the highest arbitration orders against it. As recently as 21st May, SEBI had imposed a 1 crore penalty. Again, here's a link. Take a look. You can click on it and read the details. What had India Infoline done? It had failed to segregate its own funds from client funds, misused credit balances, etc. And there were multiple audits done by SEBI. It will be interesting to know whether these audits were triggered by GRC and arbitration orders that I've talked about all this while. But is there a pattern is something that we need to look at. Third important point, which is that the list doesn't tell the story, because there are a large number of complaints which go to IGRC, okay, the grievance redress process. If the investor wins or it's unchallenged, that's the last you hear of it because it's all confidential. Then if it goes for arbitration, a much smaller number. So 3 stages of redressal are already over. It's a good thing. If there will always be complaints, so broker resolves it, it's good. If it is escalated to the grievance redress, that is where it must be tracked. And because it means that the broker refused to redress it and challenged it. That is the data that would give us an early warning. So, are these early warnings hidden behind confidential orders? We would urge SEBI, make them public, upload them, because all unchallenged orders, if they are challenged and they go to arbitration, you can do it afterwards. But unchallenged orders should be uploaded without calling them confidential so that investors know what is going on. More importantly, SEBI needs to commission a study of IGRC and arbitration orders going back at least 5 years to look at the number of complaints and whether they provide an early warning signal, the amounts involved, and check if there's a pattern among large broking firms of increasing trading volumes by encouraging their employees to deceive investors, target senior citizens, all the things that we have talked about in the last week. These actions are easily possible and will do a lot more to protect investors than to bombard us with SMS and email alerts from brokers, from depositories, from exchanges. All of us do another day job. Some are doctors, some are engineers, some are finance people. Nobody is sitting around constantly watching these alerts. And multiple alerts not only make it impossible to watch, but it fully puts the onus on us as investors to be constantly vigilant that our demat accounts are not tampered with. Now remember, we have kept our long-term savings in demat accounts because SEBI has made it compulsory, not because we wanted it. There are many senior citizens who would have preferred to keep physical shares. So at the very least that SEBI needs to do is to guarantee us 100% protection on long-term investments. And it should probably do this by allowing us to lock the account and maybe even having a market-wide insurance that when these long-term savings are misused, you can't tell the investor bad luck, you'll get 25 lakhs from the exchange. The investors have to be fully compensated. This is basic to having confidence in the markets. If you agree, please join us at Moneylife Foundation, become a subscriber. Here's a link again, it's free, and let us put pressure on SEBI to make the market safer for us. Thank you.